Good job, Bruce.
Welcome.
Welcome to Unity Spiritual Center, Pflugerville. For those folks on Facebook, thank you for joining us. Today we're talking about the phrase that came to me this week, which is we can do all things through the Christ which strengthens us. So it says all things. And then Bruce just got to sing, we can do anything. So this week has been a very interesting week for me, I must tell you. I sent an article out, some of you have an idea. And the truth is, last week it was ironic for me. I got into we talked about in our spiritual life, it's time to pull the trigger, and Madeline didn't like that, so I had to change it to it's time to start the program. And what I realized, Wednesday, Randy Kaler came to visit me. He had already talked to Tommy and came in, sat in the garage and said, I have a strong message to start the building. So, truth is, I sat there and I thought, oh my goodness, here we are. Because I had just said it's time to start doing, saying it's time to start. And I've been thinking about that, and honestly, this phrase came to me. We can do all things through the Christ, which strengthens me, and guides me, and provides the resources, and does everything that's necessary to fulfill the divine promises that we've been given. So here we are. Everybody there? Now, we're not going to have shovels out. Larry asked earlier, should we all bring a shovel? Not yet. A lot of work to do, a lot of things to get done. And frankly, I haven't interacted with Randy since that time. We got General Steele on notice. We got to talk that, but Randy, haven't heard from him since that day. And so what we're doing is moving forward based on, you ready for this? Faith. F-A-I-T-H. Now, this week, it's been very interesting for me. I was led to go back into heart-centered metaphysics. By the way, this book is wonderful. You talk about a complete manual of the ideas of metaphysics as interpreted by Charles Fillmore and the other Unity writers. It's amazing. And the group, I know I'm part of it, so I encourage you to be part of that group. And I was looking at affirmations and the definition for affirmation. And I want to read this a few times. So and this is on page 217. The affirmation is not to make a thing true. Everybody got that? So it's not to make something true, but to prepare in consciousness the way of releasing what is already an eternal reality in the superconscious mind. So in other words, these ideas would not be there if they weren't prompted by within the subconscious mind. And the idea is to bring them out of the subconscious mind into reality. So a few years ago, somebody had an idea, let's move to Pflugerville. And we found a piece of property. You wouldn't believe, for those of you who were around, we looked and we looked and we looked, and we made offers on several different pieces of property. Matter of fact, we did it twice on this property we're in, and it is ours. It came through. So there was the beginning, and now we're in the process of, okay, it's time to complete the form, complete the dream to reality. It goes on and says here, affirmations identify oneself with the Christ serve to raise personal consciousness, yet they also indirectly raise universal consciousness. So by our believing that this is possible, and our believing of bringing a building on the property in complete form at its highest end level, is also raising the consciousness of our families, our communities, and our nation. So stop and think about that. These ideas are latent within there. They are already there. We certainly wouldn't be here unless the means of getting it done was there. So here, it's interesting. Tommy called me, I think it was on Friday. We had a conversation. He asked me, has Randy been by? wondering if I talked to Randy. And so the truth is that we have agreement. And there's agreement between, right now I know, I'm going on a limb, but I know Tommy and Randy are on board. And I know some of you others have given me feedback. So here's the idea, where two or more are gathered in my name. So the way of doing this is already there. So we're giving thanks that the completion has occurred. Why? Because it's been divinely ordained. All kinds of things in here. I was looking, by the way, the Bible reference in the article that went out is incorrect. I wrote down the wrong scripture. I had it pegged as Ephesians 4:13, but it was one book later, Philippians 4:13, where it says, I do all things through the Christ which strengthens me. And it says also, here's the idea, it's bringing a divine idea into its material. And the kingdom of heaven is where? Within. So, I very simply have been saying an affirmation, thank you for our perfect church home. Thank you for our perfect church home. And here is, we are a spiritual community expressing spiritual ideas. And I realize we need a foundation, a home to operate from that is a universal energy, just like a big antenna, the work that we do in that building. So I'm looking forward to blessing the building, christening the building, holding our first service, and all those wonderful things. Can you imagine if the first service, the first wedding, the first christening, whatever, all these things will be the first for our new building that is already there in consciousness. Now, I have to say that I'm going back to the irony of this whole thing, because last week I was talking about us personally, individually. In other words, it's time for me to walk the talk. It's time for all of us to walk the talk. And all of a sudden, in comes the door, it's time to have a church home that we can talk from. So here it is. Also in Philippians is a very, very interesting chapter of the Bible. Paul was writing it because he liked the people in Philippi, and he wanted to encourage them. So there's a lot of material in that part of the Bible. And in looking at Philippians, earlier in that same chapter, he said, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. So he says, verse 6, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, and be made known unto God. Which is, I heard Valerie in her meditation earlier say, focus on the good, focus on the Spirit, focus on God within us, focus on the division, the idea that we are the Christ. We are the anointed ones, if you will. So we are the ones that are guided to open this new world that is occurring now. So to do that, we need a form. We have our own individual forms, which are one, but then we need a community form in the form of a building, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. I've really been thinking about this word intention. If I'm really honest with myself and with you, where has my personal intention been? And when I look at it, I'm looking at the truth is, my intention has to been to grow spiritually. My intention is to help you folks grow spiritually. My intention has been to expand the awareness of where we are. In other words, the conversation has increased the frequency so that we as a group attract more, and we attract spiritual things. and we grow in that process. And looking at it right now, we are doing well, given, do you realize all the constraints we're dealing with? I mean, I'm looking at you as pictures on a screen. But, you know, we're dealing with this, and we've been flourishing. So it is time to really look at where we're going and the next step. Now, things are coming to me, and I have this input that it's going to be Christmas or after before we get back together. Now I have no inside information other than Spirit says, Madeline said too. So what are we doing in the meantime? And there's a lot of planning, a lot of things we can do in this time to get started in building the building. A lot of questions, folks, a lot of questions. Where is this going to come from? Where are we going to get that? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? And the truth is, that's not focusing on Spirit and focusing on who we really are in the kingdom, and in other words, staying in the Garden of Eden, which is the place where we go when we close the door and enter the spiritual silence. So that's our job, is to create a higher frequency and really help the people that are going to start planning this whole new building. Now, we have the plans from General Steel. We got it together. We've got one of the big experts in the country, Randy, and we got Tommy behind that, and we've got the rest of you folks behind that. And where two or more are gathered, and do you understand, we ain't just talking a simple two or more. We're talking some pretty powerful two or more. And here we are saying, here's what we can do. So I'm going back to it again. And I'm going to say the phrase that we can do all things through the Christ within us, who strengthens us, who guides us, who provides the resources when they're necessary, and helps us complete things to the highest and best of our abilities. I'm just looking at my notes, and there's another thing here in heart-based metaphysics. By the way, you've got to read this book. Valerie, I hope your class grows. But here's a key idea, and this key idea is back in the chapter under realization. So how do we realize? How do we become aware? How do we wake up? And it says, to demonstrate, one must invest time in meditation, the silence, and prayer. So the kingdom of heaven is within, and realization must come from within out. In other words, it's not going to come from out in. And the realization is that we have a building completed, that the building happens perfectly and in divine order, and all of the events occur in an orderly fashion. Next thing is it says silence and prayer so that realization may occur. Whatever it is that we wish to demonstrate, we must first realize it is a divine idea. Do you understand that building and the church, this time is here now, and now is the time to move. Then it goes on and says, resulting in thoughts, ideas, and feelings that see it accomplished in consciousness. So it's a matter of dwelling in spirit and getting divine guidance on how to support what to do and how to support the idea in consciousness. So here we are. We're going to move into the future, knowing that all is well. Okay? It's really, I keep looking at this and understanding. It's really come to a realization that we really are a child of God. And as a child of God, we are then master of the universe. We're master of the consciousness of ourselves. And as that, we are God in expression. So what in the world thinks that we can't do what we set out to do? And the thing that holds us back is the fear, which is illusion, is not real. So if I really am a child of God, and each of you are, and we really do express divinity, and we are guided in the silence into our highest level, we're ready to move forward. So the intention now, we see that we need to move into our new building after pandemic. So I'm looking forward to that. I love you. I really don't have too much else to say. I'm sure somebody has some questions. Please don't ask me how we're going to do it. I don't know. God knows. And that big sign over there in that church said, God has this. So here we are, folks. Thank you. I love you. Let's move. Tracy's running to take me off camera.